Hello again, audience. So, uh, I can't decide what we're gonna look at in this particular video. So, I actually have decided. This is the area for this particular video. So, in this one, I just want to make a quick little update on the Star Wars. So, I was able to discern through the spirit who the Clone Army is and who the Separatists are, and also who the Rebel Alliance is and who the Empire is. All right, so the Empire obviously is the kingdom of God. It's a representation of the kingdom of God that has spread throughout the earth now that Christ has risen. That's who the Empire is in the original trilogy, because you notice the world became extremely Christ-centered. The Rebel Alliance, that if you notice, they're in the shadows, right? They are a representation of the demonic forces that are in the shadows, that were in the shadows. Rising to take over again, which is what they do at the end of Star Wars, if you haven't noticed. So, and obviously there's more to it. There's more complexities to it. The final battle in Star Wars, obviously, there's more complexities to it that I'm trying to understand. But if I were to say what it is now, the Rebel Alliance taking over the quote unquote taking over the world. I would say that's technically kind of what's happened here, in the sense that this quote unquote alliance is taking over the world, right? So who is the Clone Army and who are the Separatists, right? So the Clone Army, they're a representation of obviously the armies of Babylon, and the Droid Army, they're a representation of communism. It was very plain to see it, but I really could not tell. And there's also some pretty, and this, let's see how much I got. Okay, so how's it going, sir? So there's some obvious tips that kind of like tip the viewer off to notice that these things are true. For example, the fact that the Droid Army represents communism. I mean, if you look at how this particular government is set up in the particular movies, it's just like communism. The Droid Army represents that's the end goal of communism, is to get people into a robot-like state, to where they're just robots that fuel the elite of the government, which is why the army is literally robots. And it's funny, they even make them in factories and stuff too, which is hilarious. But yeah, they're a representation of the end goal of communism, which is to turn people into essentially robots. If you look at the Confederacy that you do see, they're usually like rebelling, or you only see they're really like the elite of them, which is, I mean, that's communist. Everybody else is a robot. Oh, but you think the Republic's so much better, right? Republic of Babylon. So they have the Clone Army. You know, as you look at the clones, they have their own like individualistic characteristics, but they're exactly like the other clone. But they have the illusion of freedom, which is what a republic really is. Which is what this society really is. There's a bunch of clones with the illusion that they're free. So that's why the Clone Army, they all look the same, but they have the little tiny differences, and they're still people, quote unquote, right? But they're essentially the Separatists. They just have the illusion of not being a robot, right? But I mean, they're essentially robots. You look at how the clones are raised up. I mean, it might as well be a factory, right? And I mean that's essentially Babylon, right? I mean, like the Clone Army, that's essentially like the way, you know, they raise people up. And obviously, like, now to go a little bit deeper, you look at how the clones are made, how they were raised from birth to be soldiers. Well, that's a real thing. Like I said, my channel won't last long. Like, so, The clone, like these soldiers raised from childhood to be soldiers. That is a real thing that happens in Babylon. That happens in the United States. Yeah. They do that kind of stuff. I mean, you see, there's a lot of media that admits to the fact that they do this. I mean, you see this all over the world, but for some reason, people think that the United States is so morally justified, so morally just that they wouldn't do something like this. They do this all the time. And they'll admit it in like stuff like Halo or whatever, you know. I mean, I saw somebody on TikTok that's doing that right now, but he's doing it under the guise that he's a father, so it's somehow okay, I guess. I mean, but like for some reason people don't think the government won't go into like an orphanage and do like take the kids and do that. Like people don't think that happens, but it happens all the time. Or like or like they grow kids in a lab, like they do in the clone army. So that's another element to it as well. So yeah, that's who the Republic is, and that's who the Separatists are. They're just a dynamic of communism versus republicanism. Yeah, that's really what it is, republicanism. Just like a little, just a little communism with like a little bit of freedom on top. How much time do I got? Okay, so who the Rebel Alliance? Obviously they're the remnants of this republic in this particular timeline. When God overthrows them, right? Which is really just a representation of Christ going throughout the world, and they go into the shadows. The Empire, they're a representation of these Christ-centered societies that you see a lot around. They're not really Christ-centered, but that's what you really see. And the rebels, they are the remnants of the republicanism, which is not a good thing. I know some people say it's a good thing to have the people decide for themselves, and in a sense it is. It really isn't a good thing though. You have a bunch of evil people in charge that keep secrets, and they think just because there's a general consensus that there's a quote-unquote general consensus that somehow things will these will happen just and fair, when nobody here is just and fair. It's just not. It's not a reality. You know, it's not. The reality is that you have a bunch of evil people in charge of an evil nation, and people wonder why things are absolute hell. Well, it's because it's evil people in charge of evil nations, and that's what the Republic is in this Star Wars. I mean, you look at. I mean, if you look at like if you go into the show The Clone Wars, which is like a Scooby-Doo-esque show where you're taken from confessional to confessional, and sometimes you're taken to demonic sermons in that show as well. You'll see how the Senate really runs. Like, they be taking bribes, they be doing all types of evil, and then they'll hide behind their position. I mean, look at the show House of Cards. That's a real thing. You know, where somebody didn't just think of House of Cards. People think people just thought of House of Cards. No, they didn't just think of that. That somebody showed up, said, this is what's going on, make a story about it. Dude said, all right. What people don't realize is that a lot of brainwashed people don't realize is that a lot of people take life in a very serious way. I'm getting kind of off topic here, but just to end this particular video on Star Wars. Yes, that's who these particular factions are. That's who they represent, and I just showed you the key indicators of how they are, who they represent. I mean, you can just go look around like in these Republic nations and look at how like filthy they are. Like Coruscant, it's like a hub full of all these different people, and that's the capital. Sounds just like America, just like a nasty mixing pot of the wicked, a haven of demons, according to the Bible. But that's all I have for this one. Have a good one.